Welcome back. You are watching Daybreak here on the Arise News channel. We're coming to you live from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Now for a review of what's making the headlines on the papers this morning. I have with me the Executive Director of Authority Paper, Mr. Chuks Akuna, is with me here in the studio. Good morning and thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
We'll begin with this day. Let's just run through some of the headlines on the front page. Busy front page this morning. Petrol price, of course. Petrol price hike raises cost of living for businesses and families. Kuka AYC tell the president's Nigerians are hungry. Oni of Ife appeals for calm. Leading photo this morning for this day, strengthening international collaboration there with the Minister of Interior, Olubunmi Tunji Ojo, the ICAO Secretary General, Juan Carlos, and the Comptroller General of Nigeria, Kemi Nana, at the country's signing certificate authority ceremony held in Montreal, Canada. Again, appeal court refuses to disqualify Igodalo in Edo Guber poll. President Tinubu says raising fuel price, tough decision and inevitable. He's rating his trip to China successful. Above the nameplate of this day this morning, WAEC NECO, federal government makes U-turn on candidates' age limit. Meanwhile, analysts advise federal government to expand banks' windfall tax on real sector support vulnerable persons. I think most of the daily papers this morning, Mr. Akuna, focusing on petrol price hike. This is what we've been talking about for a couple of weeks. This particular petrol price hike, this is not the first time Nigerians are witnessing such a price hike. But I think this time is different because of the scale of the crisis. I just think there's just a lot of things happening at the same time. What are your thoughts?
Yes, exactly. And but it's very interesting but inevitable. You see, I don't pity President Bola Ahmed Tinubu because in May 2003, when he was being sworn in, he had thought that with less than 700 naira per liter, he will be able to stay on safe ground. But if you see, we are usually very emotional in Nigeria. I took time to research on the global petrol prices. And, we talk about 4 refineries in Nigeria, and then talking about Dangote refinery. But forget that no mention is made of India. India has the largest oil refinery in the world. I was surprised to notice in India, they handle about 1.2 million barrels of crude oil. But on the average, we fail to realize that petroleum is a global product. It's like we have the Segilola gold mining company in Osun State, but that hasn't made gold cheaper in Osun State. You understand? The US has over 130 functioning oil refineries. That hasn't made petrol cheaper in the US. Canada has about 17 or so refineries. That hasn't made even Saudi Arabia. If you do a global comparison of the prices, you discover that petrol is about 1,000. If you do the conversion, it's about 1,200 naira per liter. If you do the conversion, so I think it's high time we face brass tacks. That's the truth. It's inevitable because if you produce cheap petrol, it's like a farmer. You produce yams, and the yam is expensive in your neighbor's house. You'll be under pressure to send the yams to your neighbor where you get money for that. So I think it's high time we face brass tacks. Like I said earlier, I don't envy President Bola Ahmed Tinubu because he's had to eat his word, second time in less than 2 years on petrol subsidy. He initially, his predecessor, we recall, initially, claimed that he wasn't going to subsidize anything. In fact, he actually called petrol subsidy a scam, but only to come and discover that, the grass is always greener from afar. So I think Tinubu too is taking a dose of his medicine. He did that in 2012 when then President Goodluck Jonathan attempted to remove subsidy on petrol. So it's very interesting times ahead, but I don't think the government is going to backtrack on this price so that Nigerians had better brace up for the future.
Wow.
A very tough one.
A very tough one. I think let's just run through all the papers that have this before we move to another topic. If you take a look at the Guardian Nigeria, it says after $30 billion on TAM, what's the future of NNPC refineries? We'll come back to that. The Punch as well, talking about petrol crisis. Another angle says trucks stranded at depots as NNPCL Dangote tango over pricing. New Telegraph still on the price hike. It says further price hike imminent as for hits 855 naira to 940 naira per litre. I think the question on the front page of The Guardian is very important. What's the future of NNPC refineries? And also, when you bring out some of these policies, there should be some mitigating things that you've put in place for Nigerians. I think there's sort of a failure of the government to adequately plan after the removal of fuel subsidy. After 1 year, we have a few CNG buses sort of scattered around across the states. There's been reports that those CNG buses, they haven't even been some sort of sensitization. People don't really understand what CNG buses are, how to use it, even to convert it. People are saying, look, it's even too expensive. We don't even want to get into it. So one, the question on the front page of The Guardian Nigeria, the future of NNPC refineries, and two, okay, yes, you've implemented these policies. You've said the price hike is inevitable, right? What are we now doing to help Nigerians go through these turbulent waves that we're seeing?
Yes, that should be the question. It's not about, like I said, I mean, it's high time we began watching reality TV. Well, then the question should be, what is the government doing about that? Because it's, I mean, talk is cheap. On May 29, 2003, you know, President Tinubu promised 2023, sorry. He promised 3,000 buses. Even at the time, we criticized him that the number was too few. But then, even as things stand, we've yet to see up to 1,000 buses. And it's a problem. It's a huge problem because, you know, it's always easy to talk when you've, I mean, it's always easy to when you cross the bridge, you know, you feel that it's easy to cross a river when there's a bridge. When there's no bridge, you know, you discover how difficult it is to actually wade through a river. A lot of Nigerians are going through pains, excruciating pains. I'm happy for people like Bishop Matthew Kuka yesterday when the APC called him to be speaker at the commissioning of their resource center. You know, he told them, he said that yes, you have invited me, but truth needed to be told that Nigerians are going through a lot. And I don't think he's the alone in that, on that matter. You know, things are very, very tough for people. Like you said, if you're going to convert, the price of converting your cars now to run on CNG, it's in some cases up to ₦1 million. So who can afford that? You know, how many persons are going to do that? I think the mistake the president made was to put the cart before the horse. You know, had the president sat down to say, okay, let's implement this, you know, in phases, just like he criticized President Jonathan in 2012. He had at the time, President Tinubu at the time had advised Jonathan that he ought to have done the withdrawal of subsidy on petrol in phases. But here we are, you know, even on his first day, you know, at work, President Tinubu, you know, withdrew subsidy on petrol. Then you also spoke about the TAM, you know, turnaround maintenance in our refineries. You know, it's become a problem. But then I've always, you know, it takes two to tango. I was with some retired military officers a few days ago, and they told me a very heart-wrenching story. That, you know, when they were in the military, you know, the problems they had, you know, chasing after pipeline vandals. You know, growing up as a child in Kwara State, we had depot in, I think we have one in Suleja for Abuja. The military cited several depots. You know, they were to pump petrol from the refineries in Warri and Port Harcourt and from Kaduna to all the states. You know, they had planned, even as the military government at the time, that it wasn't good to always put trucks on the road with petrol because we all know how flammable the product is. But what happened over time, you know, anywhere these pipelines run through, we have Nigerians, you know, very, very unpatriotic Nigerians are there at, who go there to rupture these pipelines and actually, you know, siphon petrol. So you see, our Commonwealth has always been sabotaged by us, Nigerians, and that's one problem we have to talk about, because it's one thing to have petrol, it's another thing to distribute this product.
All right, let's go back to this day. There's a story that I wanted us to touch on in the education sector. We've been having this talk about the federal government. Now the Minister of State for Education says, look, we didn't say that anyone that's less than 18 cannot write the WAEC or the NECO. What we're saying is that people under 18 should not go to tertiary institution. We have to follow the 6334. What are your thoughts on that discussion about the age limit of who can go to tertiary institutions?
You see, like most political leaders in Nigeria, you know, they talk before they think, and then whenever there's the talk goes awry, they find, I mean, the media is to blame. You see, the minister came out to say this, and you know, apparently because of the backlash, you know, he was the vice chancellor of a private university, and he was known to have admitted persons who are in his words underage. So I look at who has been dispatched to clear this mess. You know, the Minister of State. So it's high time it's a very good policy. It's not bad because, like he said, it's been the law. You know, 6-3-3-4 system. You know, we need to be not only educational, I mean, what do you call it, mature in academics, but, you know, age is also a factor in life. We can't, you know, as a sociologist, you cannot remove that from life, because that's why if you're not 18, you won't be allowed to vote. If you're not 18, you can't get married. You can't legally get married and things like that. But, you know, it's sad the way we talk. When we finish talking, then we come back to start to panabit those things we've said. You know, the Federal Ministry of Education should just have kept quiet over the matter, because, I mean, nobody will take you serious when you talk. Look at, I think yesterday, the designer of Nigeria's flag. Taiwo Akinkunmi, was laid to rest by his family. You know, very sad. You know, for a man who designed the flag of Nigeria, you know, I mean, what else could be more patriotic than that, you know? And then after 1 year of promises by the federal government, you know, and you see, this is why people don't trust government whenever government says anything. And that's the truth, because we've seen time and again, several promises broken, you know, easily made, and then so easily broken. So these are some of the issues we talk, and then later we try to pan a bit. To
backtrack.
Exactly.
I think there's just been a history of mistrust between the government and the people. I don't know if we have the New Telegraph for Saturday this morning. Two big stories. We'll discuss it either way while they try and get it up on the screen. Hardship, it says Shetima, that's the vice president, APC's first-term governors jittery over 2027. What are your thoughts on that?
I think we have
other things to worry about.
Yes, I think it's most unfair, you know. I mean, it's speculative, you know, jittery over what? You know, as if there wasn't hardship in 2003 when Tinubu won the elections. And Tinubu, in all sincerity, promised that he was going to continue from where Buhari stopped. So, in a way, he was sincere, you know, and he's living up to his promise. So, I think that story is very, very speculative, you know. It's, I mean, it's like I said, speculative. You know, they just finished 1 year. We're heading to the second year. And, you know, who knows?
But there's this talk, I think it's one of the writers here, it says the vice president leads charge to reshuffle cabinet as issues divides presidency. There's been this talk of reshuffling or firing some members of the cabinet. Do you think we're actually going to see this?
Yes, I think so. Yes, I'm very optimistic. Look at what happened with the DSS and the NIA. You know, when the DSS DG thought he was an institution, you know, he couldn't be moved. You know, President Tinubu moved him, and that's why the presidential system of government it's very unique. You know, the president has the power to hire and fire. It's not like the Westminster system. Then we've seen a lot of pressure too on the president. You know, particularly his security chief. You know, I mean, his security ministers, you know, particularly the Minister of State for Defense, Bello Matawalle. You see, he's been in the news for the wrong reasons severally, and it's also been said he's also been accused of giving oxygen to bandits. You know, he's also been accused of giving oxygen to bandits when he was governor of Zamfara State. And let's not forget that Zamfara State is a very big producer of gold, you know, has tremendous gold reserves, and then it's also been speculated that, in fact, somebody told me, one professor of pharmacy told me a few days ago, and I think it's one angle we need to pursue, that because alcohol is banned in most parts of the Northwest, that people are resorting to hard drugs. So that most of this, that it's a fight between drug barons. So I think the NDLEA and NAFDAC, especially drugs like what do you call this drugs, this cough medicine, codeine, that and I take him very seriously, because he's a very respected professor of pharmacology. He said no, that this is not about gold or whatever. That it's about drugs, movement of drugs. That people are selling plenty, humongous amounts of quantities of codeine, particularly in the Northwest, because people people wouldn't be seen to be taking alcohol, drinking alcohol, but then hard drugs is their way out of depression.
Very unfortunate. So we have to quickly move to the regional papers this morning. Citizen, South Africa. Big, bold headline there. The minister must be fired. This is the Justice Minister. They say you cannot sit in that chair. There are pressures for her to resign after her testimony in Parliament about a 500,000 rand loan she allegedly received from one of those deeply in the heist of the now defunct VBS Bank to open a coffee shop in Sandton. Now, the members of the committee recommended that she steps down just not to interfere with that investigation. Now, the question is, President Ramaphosa, who sort of built his administration on the platform of anti-corruption, has a decision to make. Does he keep the Justice Minister, potentially undermining his own credibility, or does he cut her loose?
Yeah, dilemma, very big dilemma for President Ramaphosa, because this is a Justice Minister. She's been accused of graft. Juxtapose that with Nigeria, where ministers who, in recent past, ministers who have been accused of, her counterpart in Nigeria, the immediate past minister. We saw different sizzling stories about surrounding the immediate past minister of Justice, and nothing. Even I think the presidential advisor on. The former presidential advisor on anti-corruption, Obla, came out to pointedly accuse the immediate past Attorney General of the Federation, that look at what he did when he obstructed the course of justice. And nobody appeared to perturb over those allegations. Not as much as a whimper from our federal government. But it tells us so much about what's happening around elsewhere. These are more serious countries, who take these issues very, very seriously. Had such happened in Nigeria, I'm not sure it have generated the kind of furor it is generating right now in South Africa.
And that front page is, you can't miss it.
Exactly. With a photograph, with a photograph there.
Quickly, this is the last paper we can take. The Times this morning, rich ready to quit UK over budget tax threats. That's the paper's main story. It's reporting that a number of wealthy Britons are looking to move abroad since Labour's election win. They fear there's growth over the scale of the Chancellor's potential tax raid on high earners. So, there's suggestions that the UK is on track to lose over 9,000 millionaires this year because of high taxes. Wow.
Yeah, it's very interesting. These are countries that really run on taxes. I can imagine the last time I saw anything made in the UK. Most in the UK, feasts on taxes and of course on tourism. Half of the global passengers, they go through Heathrow Airport. Very interesting. It shows you what taxes can do abroad. Here, people we have our billionaires. They evade taxes and nothing. Nothing happens. But it's still there because it's taken very, very seriously. Two very heinous crimes in the Western world. Tax evasion. We've seen people like Wesley Snipes, a very celebrated actor in the US. Who was sent to prison because of tax evasion, because you cannot pay a cent or a penny, short of what you're supposed to pay as tax in the Western world. And that's why governments are taken very seriously, and nobody can come and say he wants to steal or touch a cover of taxpayers' money. When we talk about taxpayers in Nigeria, it seems, it looks very, very far-fetched, because most Nigerians don't seem to pay the tax, especially our so-called billionaires. We tax the poor more than we do for the rich in Nigeria, and that's a tragedy of this nation.
That's a good place to live it. Thank you so much for joining me this early morning. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts on the front pages.